We're now joined by Greg Powers, Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine Director of Recruiting. I've known Greg for quite some time. Thank you very much for a busy day where you have a chance to take a deep breath. What is today like for your business? Is this Christmas? What is today National Signing Day, even though now there's two of them rather than the first Wednesday in February?
It's Christmas to me because it's not during state championship week this week. So first and foremost, that was a little bit of a win because we're not having to do double duty this week. But I always look at National Signing Day as a celebration. It's a reason to celebrate not only for the programs, the high schools that are involved with this, but it's a reason for the kids to celebrate, getting a scholarship and going to college. Now, getting paid a little bit of money to go to college through NIL. And then it's also a good opportunity for college football fans to be excited about the future of their college programs.
Okay, we'll talk about the University of Texas in a second because they're going to have the number one class across every service. They've got everything going for them right now. Steve Sarkisian, Arch Manning going to be the quarterback next year. People are going to want to come and play there. Who do you think in the state of Texas had the best day not named the University of Texas?
Well, Texas A&M flipped a 5-star, right? They flipped a 5-star from USC. They landed a 5-star offensive tackle down the stretch in Lamont Rogers. So it was a good day for Texas A&M. In the Big 12, I think Baylor and TCU did a really tremendous job in their class. TCU finished with the number one class in the Big 12. Baylor at number 2, jumping up, quite a few spots from last season. I thought as I'm writing about TCU, probably like 30 minutes, an hour ago, not enough people were talking about the job that they did to finish at the top of the Big 12. I feel like a lot of people were talking about Texas Tech last year, and it might have been that commitment from Micah Hudson, right, that was so powerful in the national scale that kind of got them in the spotlight a little bit. But I think TCU did a little bit better job top to bottom than Texas Tech did last year.
Greg, Dave Aranda was 3-9 last year, 2-4 to start the year. Didn't even know if he would be a part of the program to sign the class by the time we got to this week. And not only that, they won 6 in a row. And it appears, now Baylor doesn't have, in the history of their program, not even when Bryles was bringing in really, really good people, have they ever really been like a top 15 or even a top 10 recruiting class? What does it say, though? This one appears to be in that 20 to 25, 30 range of what they've been able to do and keep those guys loyal.
Yeah, I think Baylor's done a tremendous job this class. I think one of the most savvy hires as far as it relates to recruiting this year was Keenan Hall coming over from SMU. He did a tremendous job, not only, forging initial relationships, but staying on top of relationships. And in the transfer portal era, that's even more important because these guys might be looking around in the next couple of years. And guess what? When they start looking around, when a 5-star starts looking around, you want to be a program or a coach that has a pre-existing relationship with that top player. And that's going to be really beneficial. Recruiting never sleeps. And that's the unfortunate thing for some of these assistant coaches. It never sleeps. You have to build these relationships, and then the transfer portal happens, and you unfortunately lose some players that you've built up great relationships with, but you're going to need to use them to be able to potentially secure some of that future talent. But I really think what they did in recruiting this year is remarkable. Before Taz Williams committed, there were a lot of questions about this class, but it really seems like it snowballed into something very positive down the stretch.
Well, they got Taz. They had Morgan from South Oak Cliff, and then, of course, the others that they've added, and they were able to keep Caleb Burns, who went everywhere, and some big boy names, and he signed today with Baylor too.
Yeah, it was a huge get for Baylor. Oregon and Oklahoma come swinging for Caleb Burns, and Baylor was able to beat them both out down the stretch. Michael Turner Jr., don't forget about this guy. You're talking about a guy with 4.4 speed, one of the top running backs in the entire country. He did suffer an injury during his senior season, but at the time, man, he committed to Baylor. Everybody in the country was after this guy. Demetrius Brisbane, everybody in the country was after him at one point as well. So there are some really marquee names in this Baylor class, and I feel like we didn't give them a chance for any of these guys 8 months ago. So that tells you what they've done, not only having a little bit of success on the field, but having some youthful energy and some positive energy on the recruiting trail. You can recruit to Waco. It's in the middle of Texas. It's the hotbed of, Texas high school football, and there are plenty of players around it to recruit to. So I think that you can have success recruiting to Baylor.
How do you feel Rhett Lashley at SMU did first year Power 5, getting a recruiting class that's in the top 30 or so?
Great job. This is the highest they've ever finished. This is the best class I've covered for SMU. Their back was against the wall, it looked like, when they lost a commitment from Alabama 5-star QB signee today, Keelan Russell from Duncanville. It looked like whenever Keelan had decommitted that SMU was floundering and that class might fall apart. He was kind of like the ringleader of it. But they circled the wagons and they got a commitment from Ty Hawkins, who played at San Antonio Johnson before transferring to the IMG Academy out in Bradenton, Florida. And Hawkins he's not rated as highly as Russell, but I'll tell you what, it's great to have a top-tier quarterback in your class to rally around, and it's also even better when you get that quarterback to leave TCU's commitment class to join you on the hilltop. So that was a huge win for Rhett Lashley.
How big was Fusi's commitment to Oklahoma with A&M and Texas breathing down his neck? And Bill Bedenbaugh, offensive line coaches, had like 11 to 13 guys he had been drafted, a lot of first-round picks back-to-back years. How that was a down-to-the-wire grind, was it not?
Yeah, it was, and I think OU did a tremendous job of not only recruiting Fusi, but recruiting his family. It's a little bit closer to home in Louisville than what Texas or Texas A&M would have been by about an hour. It's really close, but it's a little bit closer to home. Huge for OU. They needed him more than the other two schools, in my opinion. They had an immediate need for him. He needs to step in there day one and play. He needs to be their Kelvin Banks. OU needed him, and they got him, and they were able to outlast strong pushes from both UT and Texas A&M. To be honest with you, I was reading all the stuff, and I thought, you know what? If Fusi steps in Austin, he's going to flip, right? He's going to flip. Watch what they do. Don't listen to what he's telling me. I thought he was going to step in Austin, and it's like, all right, it's over. But OU won out. So, it was a little bit of a surprise to me in the long run, but what a huge get for Brent Venables.
Was that really one of the only losses that Texas took? Because they've been flipping guys, and they don't have guys with many guys with 3 stars. It's 4 or more all the way down the line. They have a few, but this class is if you could have written it up, I don't know if you could have written it up any better for them.
Well, they definitely wanted DeCorian Moore, who committed and signed with Oregon, the number one recruit in the state. He was one that they definitely wanted. They softened that blow by picking up a 5-star commitment out of Florida from Jamie French, a guy that everybody thought was going to be playing for Ohio State. They were able to come in there and convince him that Austin was a better spot for his future. It worked. That helped soften that blow a lot. But at the time he committed to Oregon, DeCorian Moore was a huge loss.
Yeah, and again, different sites have different stars, but they have a chunk of them. If you look at their top recruits based on, it depends on who you go to, but athlete, wide receiver, athlete. And that's kind of who now you put enough of those guys out there, wherever they play, you're talking about alphas that make plays, correct?
Oh, for sure. For sure. Those guys at the top of that commitment list are on the offensive side of the ball. Coach Sark is known for his innovative offenses, and I think that's going to obviously help them on the recruiting trail. Last year it was Colin Simmons, right? I look at putting these classes, on top of one another and trying to put the best product on the field. But, one of the storylines I find intriguing surrounding signing day in general, and you can use Texas as a prime example of this, is, these top-tier teams, they want to build their foundation with top high school players, right? And that's what makes them special. Fill in around the periphery with talented transfer guys and guys who are really going to come in and make an impact on the field in that season. But you got to have the top-tier talent from high school, to build that foundation that you can then add these key pieces around.
We're talking to Greg Powers, Director of Recruiting, Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine. How much you mentioned that the top tier teams, and we see them, Georgia, Alabama, Texas, Ohio State, etc., Oregon, they're going to still have a big day on National Signing Day, then doesn't that allow them just to go pick and choose 3 to 5 guys in the portal to maybe offset a couple of things in which they need to fill up? I mean, all of those are going to get guys in the transfer portal that are basically 5-star type caliber players to help them out.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I look at it like this, guys. Like, what would you want to do? You know, like, how would you want to run your program? What would you feel like is the best way to do it? And I think being able to mold guys into the system that you want to coach to is the best way, especially if they're talented players with high upside. You know, they're not only guys who you feel like you can develop into your system, but they have the skill sets that you're looking for. Those are the guys that you really want, and you want to build around those guys. But they can leave now, and you have to be ready for that, right? Like, they can just up and leave, and then you got to be able to replace them. Whenever you're kind of backfilling in, that's when it creates problems. Or whenever you lose a guy that you thought you were going to keep, that can put you behind the 8 ball, so to speak in recruiting, and especially roster management, which is equally impressive, right? Or equally important. You don't just say recruiting, it's roster management now.
You mentioned TCU's had the highest recruiting class in the Big 12. Baylor did well. We know Texas did really well, right among the top 1, 2 to 5 or whatever in the country. Texas Tech last year with Micah Hudson. Now there's a question about whether he's back or not. Joey McGuire, they came in and had a big boom last year. How have they followed that up with this class this year?
Well, they used a little bit of a different approach. They slipped from, they were in the, around that top 25 range last year, and they're like right on the borderline of the top 50 this year. I think last I looked, they were at number 49. So they're right there battling for a top 50 spot. So they slipped down some, losing some of that star power, but it's a very Texas Tech, very Joey McGuire-esque class. You can look at it and see very pointed similarities between this year's signing class and what he did last year. I think the one thing that I found most interesting about what they did in Lubbock is that they went out and scoured the country and went to, I think they got a recruit from South Dakota, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Louisiana, and some of these areas that aren't as heavily recruited, and they found a guy in those spots. So maybe they went out and found some hidden gems or tried to do something a little bit differently they've never done before. And I'd be interested to see how it works out and give it a shot.
Greg Powers with us. Paul, for Greg?
Who's the biggest, especially for potential, like, would it be Justice Terry, who could, I think he's going to commit to Georgia, right? He's going to go to Georgia, but he had Texas, I think A&M on his list as well.
Yeah, I think that's the one that's probably, like, that's the big fish that's out there that everybody's kind of waiting on to see who's going to finish on top of the recruiting rankings. Maybe that's the guy that can tip the scale in favor of somebody besides Texas, but it looks like Texas has got a pretty good stranglehold. We'll just see what happens with Terry. Maybe a couple other guys are out there. Like, I know David Sanders is one of the top players in the entire country, an offensive tackle who has been committed to Tennessee. He didn't sign. Does he not sign? And then some other schools get in the mix. But guess what, guys? Like today's the day everybody's talking about it, right? Texas is in the spotlight today. So I'm giving Texas the win and the number 1 title for today. Somebody else could come in, but by the time they commit, nobody's going to be talking about it anyway.
Yeah, no, I mean, you could have Georgia sign 2 more 5-star type players, but everyone's going to remember what the story is today. And what's always fun is 5 years later or 4 years later, who are they now? Like where are they now and who are they now? Greg, I know you've been a part of this for a while. Tell everybody when you got into the business and how you got into the business.
Well, 2004 was my first year. I kind of broke into the business at scout.com, which was then acquired by Fox Sports. And I've been with Dave Campbell since 2018, which I feel like is the Bible of Texas high school football, right? And I really enjoy covering Texas teams and Texas talents. And you can find all of our fine work over at texasfootball.com/recruiting. And of course, we would appreciate you, go ahead and buy a subscription, support us, and let us keep covering, high school sports and college sports and recruiting in the Lone Star State.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it, Greg. Appreciate your time. Do a good job and a great job. And also the day's not over. There will be others that, of course, over the next couple, 2 or 3 days. Sanders, the big, large, highly rated offensive lineman, as he said, who's committed, at least for right now, to Tennessee.